evening, India has registered a diplomatic win. It has moved the International Court of Justice, or the ICJ, against a death sentence to Kulbhushan Jadhav, handed out by a Pakistani military court. Pakistan, as expected, has dismissed the development. On Gravitas tonight, we examine the fine print. Has the ICJ really stayed this sentence? Is Pakistan bound by this decision? Where exactly is Kulbhushan Jadhav? In whose custody? Under what circumstances? What's Pakistan's plan? We've spoken to sources on and off record to bring you the full story. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. The headlines first. Pakistan hopes to engage India at the SCO summit next month. Prime Minister's advisor Sartaj Aziz says they're exploring the possibility of Prime Minister Modi speaking and meeting Nawaz Sharif. US to provide weapons and equipment to Syrian Kurds, a key force in the fight against ISIS in that country. The Kurdish People's Party calls this decision historic and welcomes it. German security forces launch a nationwide anti-terror operation targeting suspected members and supporters of the Islamic State. After another high-profile sacking, this time FBI Director James Comey has been fired. US President Donald Trump says a far better FBI director will soon be appointed. But first tonight, a WION exclusive on the biggest story of the day. India's appeal to the International Court of Justice on the Kulbhushan Jadhav case has thrown the Pakistani establishment in a tizzy. WION spoke to various officials to find there's utter confusion on Pakistan's response. Sartaj Aziz, special advisor on foreign affairs to the Pakistani Prime Minister, has told WION that they are deliberating a response. Aziz said to us, and I'm quoting here, that they're looking at, since India has taken the matter to the ICJ, Pakistan will have to respond not necessarily to the ICJ, as there has been no communication between the ICJ and Pakistan, but it will respond with a statement regarding this development. Other sources within the Foreign Ministry have said that since India has approached the International Court of Justice and not them, the development does not merit a response. Joining us now is WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui, who spoke to these people. Taha, Pakistan clearly was taken by surprise and hasn't been able to figure out how to respond.
Well, definitely there seems to be a lot of muted response in a way, in the sense that nobody wants to go officially and talk about India going to the ICJ and this international pressure that Pakistan will face now in a new form. But I mean, there were questions being asked, for example, starting with Sartaj Aziz, who was at an event today where local media people talked about this. And in response to that, over there, he said that he's seen the India approaching, and then basically we're thinking about how to go about it. When I spoke to him later on further to elaborate on it, he said basically because the ICJ, now India has gone into the ICJ, so definitely this is a new development, and definitely this will require a response from Pakistan, not necessarily to ICJ itself, because the ICJ, they're still waiting for an official communication from the ICJ. In the coming days, we might see a Pakistani team of legal experts or somebody who can represent Pakistan at the ICJ to discuss this with the ICJ. But as of yet, they have not communicated anything to Pakistan, so they're not really in touch. But I mean, we're expecting a statement from them. At the same time, the ISPR, the military media wing of Pakistani army, they basically had a press conference with regards to something else, and where again a reporter asked them a question with regards to Kulbhushan Jadhav and India going to ICJ, and they said that they are also deliberating and looking at the way this is unfolding. So definitely, I mean, from the military circles, from the foreign office circles, the government circles, they're all right now sort of discussing what the next step should be for Pakistan, and because of which we haven't seen much coverage in the media also, right. Given the fact that Kulbhushan necessarily doesn't really get much coverage in Pakistan until and unless the military, which is usually handling the communication.
I'm going to interrupt you, Taha, and I'm sorry for this. Harish Salve, who's representing India at the ICJ, is with us on the phone line. Mr. Salve, good evening. Pakistan did not see this coming, and there is confusion there. But how does India see its case at the International Court of Justice? Is this a big step forward?
India sees it has a good case. That's why we filed it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have filed it.
Right, but this is not a stay technically, is it?
Sorry?
Is this technically a stay from the International Court, and is it binding on Pakistan?
A, it is binding. B, different countries use different phraseologies and expression. They call it provisional measures. What in India we would commonly call a stay of execution.
Right, and when do we expect the next development then?
Waiting with bated breath, like you are.
Absolutely. Is the ICJ sending a formal communication to the government of Pakistan? Because that's what they're saying. They haven't heard from the court, and so they do not feel the need to respond.
Again, waiting with bated breath.
This is the first time, I believe, in decades that India has taken a matter like this concerning Pakistan to the International Court of Justice.
I think that's historically correct. I think that's correct.
And I understand this wasn't done at the time of Saurabh Kalia, for instance. So what has changed since then?
I have no idea about that. No idea at all.
Can you give us, shed some light on how the proceedings unfolded? Was it just an application that was moved? How did things go about?
Yeah, that's how it is done. We moved the application. We told the registrar the urgency. The rest, you know as much as I do. We are now waiting for further developments. If you want to know what the case is, the ICJ website has put all the papers on the website.
Appreciate you joining us, Mr. Salve. Thank you very much for your time. So that's how India is taking it. Taha, do stay with us. Meanwhile, we also know that the Pakistan Army Chief General Bajwa met Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and this was their second meeting in a week. Bajwa was accompanied by the ISI chief. The meeting lasted around 90 minutes, according to various reports, and Sharif was briefed on the Jadhav developments. India continues to make every effort to meet Kulbhushan Jadhav, a former Navy official and now a businessman who was picked up by the Pakistani authorities. 16 requests for consular access have been denied, the Pakistani state stonewalling every effort from New Delhi.
We have nothing from the government of Pakistan officially in the terms of the documents, the details, the charge sheet, the summary, the evidence, etc. We don't know who defended him, if somebody defended him. The state of health, etc. of Mr. Jadhav is a matter of great concern. And we have asked the Pakistani government earlier also, and yesterday also when our High Commissioner met. I think the request was made for providing a report on his medical condition, on his health. So we await Pakistan's response.
There is also growing concern over Jadhav's health, whether he is being given any medical assistance if necessary, and the condition of his imprisonment. The MEA, meanwhile, is pushing hard for Jadhav's mother to be given a visa to visit her son.
We have nothing from the government of Pakistan officially in the terms of the documents, the details, the charge sheet, the summary, the evidence, etc. We don't know who defended him, if somebody defended him. Sridhar, we also await Pakistan's response on the visa matter. The application has been filed by the private individuals, but the government has asked the government of Pakistan that this request could be facilitated.
It is not clear why Pakistan's intelligence agencies have kidnapped Jadhav in the first place. If the intention was to get India to begin a dialogue, that may not succeed. Sources in Delhi telling WION that India cannot be blackmailed on an issue like this. We have with us, of course, Taha Siddiqui from Islamabad, Rizaul Hassan Lashkar, Associate Editor of the Hindustan Times with us from Delhi, and Rachit Ranjan, Foreign Policy Analyst and someone who understands international law very well, also joining us from New Delhi. Good evening to all of you. Riza, we've spoken about this in the past. What do you think is Pakistan's game plan here?
Well, there has been quite a bit of speculation that maybe Pakistan may be looking at to exchange Jadhav for the former Masai operative who went missing in Nepal.
I'm afraid your audio is not clear. We'll try and reconnect with you, Reza. But Rachit, that's another question as we look at the response of the Pakistani government on this. The biggest question, of course, is this a stay from the International Court of Justice?
Thank you for having me. First of all, if you look at the press release, it only highlights the request that India has made to issue provisional measures. And for that matter, it is not a stay. Press release does not constitute as an official document of the ICJ, and it states that categorically. But I think this is a move that was being deliberated ever since the news came out about Kulbhushan Jadhav's execution. And the way in which the trial has been conducted and the violations under the commitments made by both India and Pakistan of international law have been conducted, India has a very, very strong case for getting the compulsory jurisdiction of the ICJ established in this case, and getting the ICJ to invoke certain provisional measures, which by law and by previous judgments are binding on member states.
Taha, when you spoke to all the people in the government, some on record and others refusing to come on record, but giving you what the government is thinking, did you get a sense that the Pakistani government believes that it's on a weaker wicket here?
Well, from their perspective and in my conversations with Foreign Office officials, backgrounders, with military officials, as far as the whole case is concerned, Kulbhushan Jadhav is basically, the narrative in Pakistan is very different from what it is in India. Here, the narrative, everybody you talk to, is the fact that this person has led to the old allegation by Pakistan of India supporting terrorism in the country, and the fact that, you know, this is basically a proof of that. When you ask about, you know, whether or not there was a fair trial, which we definitely know, and legal experts here in Pakistan have said so, human rights observers have said so, but nobody really wants to touch the case because of the sensitivity in India, Pakistan, and the military involved in it. But basically, I mean, they don't respond to whether there was a fair trial. When you ask about consular access, they say that because he was a spy, he deserves different treatment. We do not have an agreement on spies, how they're being dealt with. So the premise here is that he was a spy, he's guilty, and he's basically been converted by the military. And that's the basic narrative that we see from the Pakistani media, the Pakistani policymakers, the military, and everybody you talk to on the issue. Definitely with human rights observers is a different thing, and there are concerns of the fact that, you know, whether or not he had a fair trial. But then again, military courts, there are big questions about it. Already, the military courts are trying many people in the country with regards to other terrorism charges. We never get to know what goes behind the scenes when it comes to military courts, who are the judges, what is the evidence. Usually, it's a communication through a press release that the military media wing releases and says, this is what has happened, and then everybody reports it accordingly. So definitely there are big questions about the transparency of this, and no answers forthcoming from the government or the military in this matter.
Right. Reza Lashkar, I'm told, is back with us. Reza, this is certainly a diplomatic win, and Pakistan has been stumped on that front. But is Kulbhushan Jadhav any closer to getting justice? Does it really change matters on the ground?
I I think I would agree with what Mr. Sandhya said. We'll have to wait with bated breath because I don't think Mr. Jadhav is out of the woods as yet. Don't forget, he is in the custody of the Pakistani military. There has been no sighting of him for months. As the MEA has said, we have no idea about his condition. And, till some sort of an exchange or some sort of trade could be worked out, I would be pretty worried about his well-being.
Right. We'll try and improve the audio connection, and I do apologize to our viewers for that. But the other exclusive input, let me tell all of you watching this show tonight, is that we possibly have the answer to a frequently asked question: exactly where is Kulbhushan Jadhav and in what condition? 3 highly placed sources in the Pakistani establishment have told us that he's still in military custody. Since officials refuse to give precise details, we've been able to deduce the following points from the people we spoke to. A. Jadhav is in one of 2 possible locations in Pakistan: Rawalpindi, which is the army cantonment closest to the capital Islamabad. The other location probably is Lahore. Jadhav could be confined in an ISI safe house situated in a residential area. He would be kept isolated with no access to communication of any kind, television or newspapers. This is what we've been able to gather. Jadhav has been convicted by a military court for sure, and as per rules in Pakistan and what regulations say, he should have been transferred to civilian custody, but that hasn't happened. Sources say since he's a high-value prisoner and can be harmed in a civilian facility, he's being kept under strict vigilance of a safe house or military prison in solitary confinement. And these safe houses, we can tell you, contain basements where prisoners who are alleged spies are often kept, and Jadhav could be one of them. Let's also bring you up to speed with what happened at the ICJ. India has basically accused Pakistan of egregious violations of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. The court, in response, said, and I'm quoting from that order, which was based on Article 74, Section 4 of the Rules of Court. It said, pending the meeting of the court, the court basically saying that they have taken up the matter as India presented it, which allows for orders to be issued as provisional measures pending a hearing at this court. And this is the first time since 1971 that India has initiated a case at the ICJ. Jurisdiction should not be a problem, experts tell us, since both countries are party to the optional protocol of the Vienna Convention, giving the final say to the ICJ. So, Rachit, my next question to you is this. If this court were to give a verdict against the Pakistani position, would it be binding for Islamabad?
Yes. Legally speaking, it would be binding under Article 94 of the UN Charter. If you look at Article 94, Subclause 1, any judgment made, any provisional measures or any observation or judgment made by the court shall be binding on the parties. But the implementation mechanism of ICJ does not exist, which means that to give effect to any such judgment, you have to move under Article 94.2 to get a Security Council resolution on the particular issue. And given the fact that China is a permanent member of the Security Council, there is a strong likelihood that in the event that there is an adverse ruling against Pakistan, then China may very well veto any draft resolution that calls for implementation of the provisional measures. Having said that, I think it's important to focus on why states create international tribunals, and that is a simple functional analysis of all international tribunals reveals that it's mostly created for the sake of getting information on international commitments. And once this information is achieved, then the next steps are decided. So India is probably doing this to showcase to the international community that Pakistan has flagrantly violated international law commitments that it made under the ICCPR and the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. and use that as a tool within the UN and other international organizations to name and shame Pakistan, while using this as a tool to implement some sort of retaliatory measures, which may be in the form of sanctions, which may be in the form of cutting off trade ties. The list can be endless.
So, Taha, of course, the world knows that Pakistan violated the Vienna Convention. What is stopping them from not abiding by whatever the ICJ comes up with? But these meetings that the Prime Minister has been having with the army chief, the second time in a week, is this about part of it about strategizing how to go about it? Because whether or not it follows it, this does add pressure and this does embarrass Pakistan on an international stage.
Well, the meetings are particularly about a different case, as you know, about the whole Dawn issue and with the Dawn leaks that has come to known, and because that was the civil-military tensions that were ongoing. But as far as, the civil-military sort of take on this is concerned, and whether the Prime Minister is pushing for something or not, we do know the Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and his government has been quite pro-India since the beginning that they came into power, and Nawaz Sharif was sort of friendlier to India, but the military is taking the lead here with regards to Kulbhushan, and in a way, all those overtures that Pakistan has been making or had made in the past from the civilian side, now they've even gone into a background, given the fact that the military sits on the table and says, look, we found the evidence of India doing what we have been saying, and you've been asking for evidence, and now we have evidence, even though, flimsy or whatever, that's a different point. But this is basically the kind of, and because of that, the military is leading the charge, the military is deciding what to do, and the civilians are just following up. So every time we hear about anything with regards to Kulbhushan, it's the military media wing releasing statements, military sources releasing statements, and then later on the Foreign Office following it, the Defense Minister following it, or other government functionaries following whatever the military is saying. So that's how this works with regards to Kulbhushan Jadhav and how the civil-military relations are in the country. The military is totally in charge.
Right. Rachit, the other question is this. What has been the record when it comes to India-Pakistan issues at the ICJ? And do states not tend to dispense with such tribunals the first thing when they're put in a dock?
So there have been two disputes that have been brought by Pakistan. One was in 72 and the other one was in 98. The 72 one was with relation to Pakistan's right to fly over Indian territory, which India had suspended. And the 98 one was with respect to India shooting down a Pakistani aircraft. And in both cases, the compulsory jurisdiction of ICJ was not established because there was no treaty between the two parties that could put in force the compulsory jurisdiction of ICJ. And I would just like to respond to the question that you posed to Mr. Salve as well, that why this case, why the Saurabh Kalia case was not brought before the ICJ by India. So if you look at the commitment under Article 36, India has made some reservations with respect to referring disputes that relate to Pakistan and other Commonwealth countries. And that is the precise reason why they could not bring a case of Saurabh Kalia before the ICJ. But in this instance, there is an additional treaty, and the optional protocol of that treaty, both the parties have accepted compulsory jurisdiction of the ICJ without any reservations. And that makes a very, very strong case for the ICJ to establish its jurisdiction over this matter. And the case is strong enough to invoke provisional measures.
Right. We'll see how this goes then. I'm going to thank you all. Unfortunately, we couldn't speak to Razaul Lashkar in detail. But thank you very much, Taha Siddiqui, Rachit Ranjan. Appreciate both of you joining us and shedding light on this. So where does this go from now? How does Pakistan respond? And how strong are Jadhav's chances? How hopeful should his family be? These are questions that still remain, but Pakistan certainly will have to abide by international law. And at best, this is a delaying tactic and it does help India's and Jadhav's case. That is what we've gathered from this discussion. We're going to take a short break. Still ahead on the show, a WION special report on the government's plan to make defense equipment in India.